Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Hope your week is off to a great start. Hope your year is off to a great start. First Monday show of the year here. We made it. And as you can see, I have a returning guest. Kayla has been on the show before and was willing to jump back into the hot seat. So, Kayla, thanks so much for taking some time again to come on here and discuss your recent job search and a whole lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to be back with you.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been about 3 years now since you made the move out of the classroom and started focusing, pivoting into a few different sales related roles that you've had. I always like to ask the transitioned educators that come on just kind of as that discussion. Now that you've been in your new role for some time, what are some of those things that you found has been most refreshing since you made the changes? What are some of those things that you can now look at and say, oh, this is just so nice that this is a benefit of what I get to do.
I love that word refreshing because yes, um, honestly, like time, and I feel like that's probably what a lot of people would say who have made any type of transition, whether out of the classroom or maybe just careers in general. Um, but like it's so nice. Like I drop my kids off at school, I go to the gym, I come home and just, do my day before I pick them up again.
Yeah,
Uh, but even things like appointments, right? Like we're just in sick season. You and I were just talking about that. It's
right.
like, man, everybody's just getting sick all the time. So to have the ability and the freedom, okay, I need to run my kid to the doctor really quick. I'll be back in an hour. I'm not having to worry about sub plans or, maybe a sub not even being available. Sometimes not even the plans. It's like the people. Is there a person to put in the classroom for the safety of all my students?
Right.
Probably not. And my kids would suffer because of that. So perspective, but I think time is the biggest thing. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the reasons I reached out to you, because again, you've been on the show before and we talked about your initial journey through, and some educators are still trying to make that move into a new role. And you just recently had to successfully navigate through a job search again. Wanted to kind of get your story there. How was your approach different this time? Each time you've pursued a new role, what are some of those things that you take with you from your last job search that have kind of helped you get into a new role a little quicker than it happened before?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Aside from continually networking with people who are further along in their careers than I,
Mm.
so when I started my journey, it was, who are the people who are just former teachers who got out of this? Like that, I didn't even care what they did, right? I was like, what are you doing that is not here, that is still allowing you to pay your bills?
Mhm.
And maybe, hopefully, you have a sense of joy in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, I think from being in sales and then pivoting to another sales is one, owning my successes in the previous role and how I had grown. So being able to showcase my wins. But I think also transparently is owning my losses. People are more apt to, I think, receive you as like a human and like another person when they can relate over the losses and how you overcame those. So leading with, while I don't have X, Y, and Z, what I do have is A, B, and C. And here is how that is going to benefit your team or the specific role, and just being very pointed in those types of conversations. Um, yeah, but I think you know me well enough to know that I'm pro-human. So I'm like, just be normal, like just be yourself and speak to those wins and those losses. And I think you should take pride in both.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a curveball question here, so
Yeah.
apologies, but working in sales and I've interviewed candidates for sales positions, and that is a question that, we discuss. Everyone wants to talk about wins, and obviously it's great to highlight that, but especially in sales, some of those losses can, eventually turn into wins. So it's good to talk about those. Has being in sales kind of helped you with that when it came to being comfortable talking about that kind of stuff in your interview process, your job search process?
Oh my gosh, 1000%. Because 98% of my day feels like a loss
Mhm.
because you're not always getting that immediate gratification of your work,
Right.
right? It's like a continual process and you're working and working and, you're etching away to that win, which might be months down the road. And
Mhm.
so it's all about perspective,
Yeah.
finding small wins throughout your day so you feel like you're making progress.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So good segue into the next question here because we've talked about transferable skills before. Last time you were on, you really kind of highlighted some of the things that you took with you from the classroom into your sales focused career now. And one of those things I like to ask anyone who's now been in that new position for some time is, what are some of those skills that you didn't think you were going to take with you that have really been beneficial now that you're in a new role? And you're like, oh, I did this all the time in the classroom. Didn't even think that it would come in handy now.
Oh, that's a really great question. I think I would probably go to my growth mindset, which
Mhm.
sounds funny, but like bear with me. We're always teaching our students about growth mindset and taking a challenging moment and seeing where we can learn and pivot from that. I think a lot of times when you're wanting to leave the classroom, you have this picture that the other side is so much greener. And if you can just get to that pasture, there's going to be no bumps and it's a happy day every day because you're not having to deal with these things anymore and you're getting to do whatever this looks like. Because a lot of times you don't even know what it actually looks like. You just want to be there.
Right.
Um, I think having a growth mindset of like, wow, there's some brown pastures on this side too. It's not all green, it's not all happy, it's not all easy. There are different challenges with every industry you enter into. And so
Mhm.
I think having a mindset of why did I make this switch? What is my ultimate end, game here? Which for me personally is providing for my family. And if I'm in a job that allows me the flexibility that I need to love and serve my family well, then that's my win and that's where I'm having to grow in my mindset. So I think I wasn't expecting to use some of the lessons that I was teaching my own students in their academic journey
Okay.
self.
Yeah. It's great that you get to, though. A nice full circle moment for you.
Yes.
So then on the other side of that, obviously walking into a new position, no one's going to know how to do every new job that they go into. And even, as you progress, there's always those things that come in. I've been in recruiting for almost 10 years now, and there's always new
Yes.
things that I need to learn too. So what are some of those skills now that you've been doing this for a few years that you found you really needed to develop? Because a lot of transitioning educators have kind of targeted sales and ed tech as next position. So what are some of those things that you would tell them, be prepared to really need to develop this skill if you're going to be successful in the role?
I think I underestimated how intentional I was going to have to be in my day to day. Um, And I mean that via, you kind of go through the motions of every day as a teacher, and they always, stand on the hill and cry out flexibility, right? Because you don't know what your day is going to bring with students or events, whatever.
Right.
Um, but I think being being intentional with my time, which I'm going to tie this back into their job search as well.
Yeah.
Being intentional with my time every day allows me to determine if my day is going to be successful or not. And I don't think I realized how structured I was truly going to have to make myself because I don't have 30 students relying on me to follow a lesson plan or to follow our schedule for the day or the IEPs or whatever it is you're doing.
Mhm.
Um, but I do have a team that's relying on me to complete certain things at a certain hour and doing them really well. And so I think being very intentional with my time and a good practice for that prior to landing a job is practice intentionality with your job search.
Mhm.
Time block. Don't fall into this trap of constant scroll of like, but what if I miss the next job posting?
Yeah.
I know even navigating some layoffs that I've been through, sadly, in this space, it's easy to doom scroll. You're just
Mhm.
like, what is the next thing? Who can I talk to? I think setting parameters for yourself to do deep work uninterrupted is something that I didn't realize would be so incredibly impactful for myself. And I would encourage whatever industry you're in to shut off distractions and deep work for like an hour. And I
Yeah.
think you'd be amazed at how much you get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of encouraging, you're always very encouraging with your situation. And I've seen you through LinkedIn kind of be that support system to others. And you and I have talked about the importance of work-life balance. Finding a company whose ideals align with your own. So, going through a couple different searches now, how have you tried to prioritize this during the interview? Because that's easier said than done, right? Everyone is puts work-life balance and company environment at the top of their list when looking for something new. But it's really hard to really pull that information out during a 30-minute phone screen. So what are some of
Sure.
the ways that you do that?
Yeah. I think that I would go back to that intentionality piece.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I resonate with people who are looking because I'm like, man, you don't know, you feel like you don't know what you're looking for. You don't know how to actually do it, but you have this drive to want to, which I think is why I just try to be so encouraging of like, keep on, like, you're doing the thing, and I try to give tips and tricks and all the things, but um, I think I go back to just like not that doom scroll situation. Like, you have to set parameters for yourself. Within those parameters, you're still experiencing that work-life balance, if you will.
Right.
Um, Take time to go outside. Like, don't be tied to like LinkedIn on your phone or whatever job board you're trying to navigate through, because you're gonna burn yourself out. And 9 out of 10 times, and I'm saying this to a recruiter, I think based on my experience, a lot of times you're not going to land that job because you randomly applied to some link on LinkedIn. It's going to be because you spoke to a specific person who connected you to somebody else, who connected you to somebody else. And so those things take time. So I think also take the pressure off yourself. It's not going to be an overnight success. Maybe you'll be that point one,
Yeah.
but likely it's going to take time. So have boundaries.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll talk about networking in a little bit here, but I wanted to continue
Okay.
on the positivity side of things and, not to act like I'm just heaping praise on you during this conversation, but that is concept of like when people engage with your posts and they look at them and, there's this genuine, authentic positivity there. It doesn't feel like Kayla's like at a 10 or anything like that, but you at least kind of put that energy out there. And so how do you try to make sure that you're sharing like genuine positivity and because not everyone can do that all the time, but you also don't want to get on LinkedIn or any social media, with a job search feel to it and just be negative. It's easy to vent, it's easy to complain, but sometimes that can be looked at the wrong way. So how do you as your headline says, assist people in identifying their passions and cheer them on?
Yeah. So great question. And I'm going to answer it twofold. So as far as cheering them on, I think that I so desperately wanted somebody cheering me on in the LinkedIn space when I was trying to make this move.
Mhm.
When I left the classroom a little over 3 years ago now, it was not as common to see educators who had successfully done this. That was not something that I easily found on LinkedIn. And so for me, I'm like, if I can just make it so clear to people that, yes, I have successfully changed careers and did it in this way. And that's not to say theirs has to look the same way because all of our journeys are different. Um, but I just wanted to be that pop up on somebody's, feed that was like, oh my gosh, I was feeling so discouraged by looking at all these people's wins and this person getting the next promotion and all the things. Be like, hey, it's okay if you are just keep on keeping on. Like that in itself is like a good thing. And so I think reminding myself of where it came from and not forgetting that is really important to me. And so I try to always put that in front of people of, hey, nobody has arrived. Like
Right.
we're all just like in this great thing called life, trying to just like serve our families and do the best that we can. And
Mhm.
that's all that's asked of you. That's all it's required. So I want to cheer people on in that sense. When it comes to identifying your passions, that is the line of work that I happen to fall into, which I'm so grateful for, because it does fit very much to my personal Kaylaism, if you will. It's just who I am. Where we are using motivational science to identify intrinsically how somebody was really uniquely designed, and then how that could benefit their workplace via corporate, professional developments. We've recently started working in the school systems to help with analysis of students and teachers as well. So it's been really special to just kind of see this come full circle for me. So.
Mhm. So let's talk networking a little bit. And I want to break this into two questions here. And one of them is going to go back to something you said earlier about, changing your strategy when it comes to building your network. Initially it was connecting with transitioned educators, who's made the move, who can I learn from? And now that you've pivoted more into sales, doing that, finding people who've grown into that career and picking their brains so you can continue to further your career. So networking seems to be one of those things that's the hardest for a lot of transitioning educators. And it's easy to find, oh, this person was an educator, they've gone through this, they know what I'm going through, let me connect with them. It's a lot easier to do that than to say this person's in the field that I want to be. They don't have the same background that I do. How do I start that approach? So what is your strategy to kind of doing building that network that way now, approaching people who don't necessarily have the same background as you, but are in the path that you want to be in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think by interacting with people from the algorithm opens up more possibilities of meeting other people. Um, and so transparently, I'm just taking in good content. When I see good content that's teaching me something, and I'm like, ooh, that would actually be beneficial in my day to day for my specific job. I will go to that person's profile. I'm like, well, let's see what they do. Oh, wow. Okay, they're a chief revenue officer. That is not what I do, but I can learn from them.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, I've really pivoted to using voice messages.
Okay.
It's so human. I just send a quick note like, hey, Matthew, I saw this. It resonated with me, and this is how it encouraged me. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to do that. Hope you have a really great week.
Mhm.
Something very personal, human touch. I do get a lot of responses of like, yo, Kayla, that was like really cool. Like, thank you so much for the voice memo. Like, hope you have a great week too. And then we connect and then we start interacting with each other's content. And sometimes that will lead to like a phone call of like, hey, is there any way that I could like serve you? Or is there anybody in my network I could intro you to? And you just start building those relationships.
Mhm.
So for me, that's been super beneficial. So
Yeah, and on the other side of that, you give back a lot, and you've continued to, through networking, now that you've made the move, encourage other people, and I see that in terms of the posts and the comments that you have in there. So that leads me to my other question, because I get a lot of questions too from people who have moved from the classroom to something else, and they want to give back like you're giving back, but either don't know where to start or are hesitant because they don't want to give the wrong advice. So how have you kind of tried to craft that to make sure that you're not unintentionally misleading someone or being discouraging? Because sometimes you give a piece of advice and it just kind of takes the wind out of the sails of a job seeker. Didn't mean to do that, but it just has happened. So how do you try to just focus more on the positivity and avoid those types of situations?
yeah, absolutely. I think one, I just try to be very genuine to who I am. And I always lead with this was my experience and give the freedom of it's okay if yours doesn't mirror this or, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of giving them that freedom of like, hey, just because your story doesn't look like mine doesn't mean that we're not both successful or
Right.
that you're not being successful in how you're doing things. But I also intentionally call out, hey, I hope this has been helpful and like encouraging for you. If you have any other specific questions, I would be happy to answer those to the best of my ability. But also know I'm still on my journey and I'm still learning too, and I don't have all the answers, but maybe I know someone who does.
Yeah, absolutely.
A networking.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. For sure. So last question in the Hype Up Kayla episode here is you were recently
okay.
named as one of the 300 women making an impact in B2B sales. So first of all, congratulations. That's awesome. When I saw that, I was really excited for you just because I know what your journey has looked like. And so I'm sure that that meant a lot to get that notification. So, what did that being included in that list mean to you, given where you came from, where you are now, where you hope to be? And second part of that question is how are you going to try to utilize that to inspire and advise others who come to you for advice or questions about how to get into sales, not even just educators, but in general?
Yeah. Thank you. I was so surprised. In fact, I read the email that I got multiple times and was like, I think this is a scam. Like this is interesting. I even looked up the gentleman who sent me the email. I was like, no, he's real. Okay. Wow. I was very shocked. Who even creates these actual lists? Who's behind them? I don't know, but it was so kind and I felt incredibly honored, and really blessed. So I was very thankful. I've met a lot of women because of that who are also in sales and women are pretty minority when it comes to sales in a very male dominated industry, so it was really neat to make some new connections that way. um I think when it comes to the second part of your question of, how will I use that to inspire? I think that it's not so much of I want to have this of like, look at me as much as, hey, I'm just normal. Like, I am a mom of two kids and I have a husband and we have dogs and I'm behind on laundry. Like, I'm just like you and we're just trying to love and serve our families well and provide for them in whatever way that looks for you. Um, I didn't do anything special, Matthew. I just showed up. Like I just tried to post something based on my experience that I knew would resonate with me when I was in my job search.
Mhm.
And that is what I was after. And if it lands with people, great. Even if it's just one, even if it's just encouraging one person,
Yeah.
I think I've won the day, right?
Yes.
So that is the intention is, hey, list or no list, just be there for people and just be human and relatable. And I think that's ultimately what sticks.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, well, before I let you go, you've been on the show before. I always close out with the advice question. So, obviously, you've given that piece of advice before, and throughout this whole episode too. So, to ask you to share some more insight advice is probably going to be tasking you, but I know you can handle it. So, now that you've gone through this job search, and have found something new, something that appeals to you, something that you genuinely love, what's that advice that you would give to people in terms of, you talked about intentionality throughout our conversation here today. What's the easiest way that you find to push yourself to find that intentionality with your search and with new opportunities?
I think taking the time to identify your true goals and what it is that you're desiring, building that pros and cons list, and then being committed to that and not settling. Um, I think that that's huge. And I think that that's how I've landed where I am today. I've been given a lot of opportunities, and on paper, it looks so shiny and like the next best thing. But the values weren't there. It didn't align with what I knew would best serve me. And so I have said no to a lot.
Mhm.
And there's power and there's okay with saying no.
Yeah.
You shouldn't jump at the first thing that appears in front of you. So I think as far as intentionality goes, that would be my encouragement is intentionality, but also I'm going to add consistency.
Yeah.
Be consistent, but don't be obsessed because
Mhm.
there's a difference. It's
Right.
good to have boundaries. Boundaries are good and they're healthy.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
what I'll say.
Absolutely. Well, Kayla, again, congrats on the award, and thank you again for
Yeah.
taking the time to be on here with me. I'm sure I'll reach out to you again down the road and ask you to do this again. But always appreciative of you taking the time. If you're not connected with Kayla, make sure you're doing that. And we hope you have a great week and talk to you next Monday.